Ankin Ma'at, Ankin Ma'at. It is wonderful to be back here with you for Kemetic Ascension, brought to you by the Shrine of Ma'at. My name is Jabari Osaze, also known as Heru Jedin Ma'at Aten Ra. I'm coming to you looking a little bit differently, as you can imagine. I actually have been invited, Anika and I have been invited to an event in Queens, New York. It's an Afache celebration that is going to be held by one of the shrines of folks who practice Ghanaian spirituality. So after this is over, we're going to be jumping in the car and burning the road. So I figured I would dress in my Ntama today. Certainly it is African cloth. Anika's giving me looks because she did not dress in her Ntama, which you'll see in a little while. She said, I am not going to be able to move around in the manner that I'd like, so I'm going to put my Ntama on afterwards. So if you see Anika giving me looks, that's the reason why. So let me go ahead and say, welcome to you all. And I'd like to also ask, as we do every session, let us know how long you have been part of Kemetic Ascension and where on the back of Geb, where in the world you are. Let us know how long you've been partaking in Kemetic Ascension, how long you've been an important part of Kemetic Ascension, and let us know where in the world you are. So I'm hoping that we have some responses, Anika.
We have Abu Jamar in the house.
Abu Jamar, Ankin Ma'at, one of the priests, one of the leaders of the Shrine of Ma'at. You would think that this would be cooler because my whole arm is out, but it is not, is it?
Not with that heavy fabric. Brother Colvin out in Flint, Michigan.
Ankin Ma'at to you, Brother Colvin. Ankin Ma'at.
Brother Jason Holmes out in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Ascend Jason, one of our full members. It's wonderful that you are with us, dear brother. Hope you're doing well.
Smith Corsia says, Ankin Ma'at, African Chief Jabari of South.
Ankin Ma'at to you. Ankin Ma'at.
We have Senator Rich Duggan, another member.
Ankin Ma'at, coming out of Queens, I believe. So we'll be near you today. Ankin Ma'at.
Yes, and San Cortia is repping Atlanta 3 to 4 years.
Yep. She's in the ATL.
St. Jason says about 5 years.
Yeah, St. Jason's been with us for a long time.
There's Septopia Black, good to see you again, about 5 years.
Ankin Ma'at, I don't think I've heard that name recently.
There's Shiria Sakina Ra out in North Dakota.
Ankin Ma'at, I wonder what North Dakota is like. Ankin Ma'at, I know she's just recently moved. Ankin Ma'at to you. And I saw you on Sonnetter the other day. I hope all is well. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Trina Gilliam out in Baltimore.
Ankin Ma'at to Trina.
Don't know the name. It says GoTravelBroad.com from Nicaragua. Over here.
Are you in Nicaragua right now? That'd be interesting. That would be the furthest away that we've heard so far, right? Ankin Ma'at.
We have Ocean River saying Witness Protection Program in Maine.
The Witness Protection Program. Ocean Rivers. Isn't that's not Sanet Oye?
I'm calling out. No.
No? Oh, okay. Ankin Ma'at.
We have Seth Curtis from Painesville via Pittsburgh.
Yes, Ankin Ma'at. How are you doing, Sen Curtis? I have been meaning to call you. I will call you this week. Ankin Ma'at, just to check in and see how you're doing. Ankin Ma'at.
Sen Atan out in Chicago with us for 3 years.
Rocking from Chicago. Ankin Ma'at to you. It is wonderful to know that you're out there in the Windy City.
We have Shantia Gary. Tell us where you're from.
Ankin Ma'at. That name sounds familiar. Oh, it sounds new. Ankin Ma'at.
We have a Facebook user with no name. Let us know who you are. We have Heru Asar Ankh Amin Ra out in Dallas, Texas.
Ankin Ma'at. That powerful name.
Yes.
Ocean River is Abu Tashat.
Okay.
That's right. I knew that name was familiar. I could not remember who that was. Should I not be telling them? Because she just texted me that that's you. Should I not be telling them who you are? Now we blew up your spot. Blew up your spot. What you mean you're in Maine? Are you really in Maine? Something going on that we don't know about?
Armand Kirkland out in Austin, Texas.
Ankh and Ma'at, Texas in the house. Texas is always in the house. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
We have Sen Cleo, one of our members. Good to see you.
Ankh and Ma'at, Sen Cleo.
Murring the gear.
He's what?
Murring the gear.
Oh.
We have Sen Brandon Moore. Good to see you. Ankh and Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. It is not necessarily easy to move in this outfit, you should know. But the chief is not supposed to be moving around a lot. That's what it is. Chief's supposed to be sitting there greeting people. Anika and I have not ever had the benefit of just sitting around and greeting people though, right? We're always very busy, and I still have to figure out exactly how I'm going to drive in this. So we will I'll do that too. Anika laughing at me.
Ooh, good. The Fergusons in North Carolina with Ankh and Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at to you. Ankh and Ma'at.
We have Katena Kajnet Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at, one of our full members. I'm trying to remember where she and her dear mate, her husband, are from.
North Carolina.
Is it North Carolina? I can't seem to remember where they're from. And I spent the whole weekend with them and forgot that her husband is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha like I am, and we didn't even acknowledge that. Anyway, just bizarre. Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at.
Kem Sarah Nefer Atum, nice, out in Baltimore.
Ankh and Ma'at. That's a powerful name.
Yes. Let's see. We have Sunette Newt is with us.
Out in Boston, Ankh and Ma'at.
Oh, goodness. Tahuti Ma'at Ross Sirius out in Wichita, Kansas. Good to see you again.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. We see that name regularly.
Ma'ati Aset, Ankh and Ma'at. Good to see you.
Ankh and Ma'at.
Yes, and Katena is North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, you're good. I didn't remember exactly what state it was.
We have Illinois in the house, no name, but
and give a great 06 to your husband. I didn't even greet him. We didn't even talk about it when we were eating or anything. Anyway, Ankh and Ma'at.
Sinette Brittany, Ankh and Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at, Sinette Brittany. Long time no see, just because of the stuff that's going on.
Senko says he's doing better, just completed days of chemo.
Wow, I really do need to call you. I'm going to speak to you and see how you're doing, actually. Wow.
We have Kele Sarah, Ankh and Ma'at.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at.
Kazumai from Kemra in Sweden.
Are you in Sweden now, or are you from Sweden?
In Sweden.
That's interesting. I wonder if Sweden is further away from us than Nicaragua.
Is the organization called Kemra? Let us know. It'd be nice to know if there's a shrine out in Sweden.
It really would be.
Sandra Taylor, Ankh and Ma'at, out in Middletown, New York.
Ankh and Ma'at, someone name we hear regularly.
Let's see. Oh, Sekou Kelly from Canada.
Sekou, brother Sekou, yeah. that I admire so much on Sonnetta's platform. I was just talking to Anika about something you said just yesterday, I think. He's holding it down. It's wonderful. Greetings, brother Sekou. Greetings, greetings, greetings.
It says, let's see, Kimberly Sweetness Williams, Ankh and Ma'at, tell us where you're from.
Ankh and Ma'at.
Kam Sarah Nefer says Medasi Nana. We have Broken Pansy Obavini Kanefer Reverend Ra out in North.
Is he adding to that name?
Always that way. I like his name.
Ankh and Ma'at, repping North Philly, Ankh and Ma'at. Feels like I haven't seen him in a long time. This pandemic really sucks. Can I say that it sucks? It really sucks that there's some people who are relatively close by that you would expect you would see that you just don't see. So. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
Personette Daria. Oh, Uncle Ma'at, I hope you received your gifts. I got a call from Sonette Tara, and she's still working on it, so we look forward to it when they arrive.
Ankin Ma'at, Sonette Daria, one of our full members. She and her sister are full members. Ankin Ma'at.
We have Kemet Dawn I out in Barbados.
Barbados. Now, it's hot in New York City right now, but I would still rather be in Barbados. Is that wrong? Am I a flat lever? Am I like, do I have a problem with New York City? Maybe I do. Maybe I do.
Okay, I see Ronald Garrison says, Nana Kwame Ron, loving my visit.
What are you saying? Nana Kwame Ron is on?
I believe so.
Is that Nana Kwame Ron? Is it?
I think so.
Nana Kwame, obviously Kwame Ron, obviously we were in stool together. Is that Nana Kwame Ron on?
It says Ronald Garrison.
I guess I didn't know his name was Ronald Garrison. Ankin Ma'at. You know, it's funny because I thought about you a lot today because out of our group, he was the one that was most proficient in rapping the Ntama. So I was like, I wish Kwame Ron was here right now. Anika saw all of the Ntama fails, just as you did when we were in Cape Coast trying to rap the Ntama. He saw all the fails. He was the one that was most proficient. He had it rapped very well.
Okay, Yvette Calvin out in California. Ankin
Ma'at.
We have El Day Ali out in Birmingham, UK.
Wow. Quite a few people from a little further away today, huh?
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether, I think Sweden is further away than the UK. And I think that Nicaragua is closer than that. So I honestly think that Sweden is probably the furthest right now. Because Nicaragua is in this hemisphere, so. Well, I mean, so is Sweden, isn't it? It's still Western Hemisphere.
Is it Nicaragua or South Africa? South America, right underneath us. Sweden is to the east.
I don't know if I would call Nicaragua right beneath us. It's a trip.
Wow.
It's a trip.
I think it's closer to Sweden.
Yeah, so do I. I agree on that one. Yes.
We have Seshmeet, Ubuntu, and Ma'at.
Seshmeet.
That's what I said.
Good. Because we both mess up the name. And I think I started messing up your name, yes. Sonette, and I infected Anika. Seshmeet. Ankin Ma'at, it's good to see you there. We know that Seshmeet has been working on some Hesi as well.
Yes, we heard it.
So we may well see what else she's cooking up as well. She should be working with the Hesi team to create some stuff. She just created some Hesi and worked with that wonderful couple out in Ghana, the Schaefers, as well.
Yeah. We have Sadet Ra'el out in Illinois.
There's the other sister, Ankin Ma'at.
Yeah.
Both sisters are in the house.
The brother says, yes, he is in Sweden.
He is in Sweden. Yeah, Sweden's the furthest away today so far. Welcome. What time is it in Sweden right now? What time would you think it is, Anika? I think they'd have to be at least 4 or 5 hours ahead of us.
4 o'clock, maybe 4:30.
What time is it in Sweden right now? Hey Siri, what time is it in Sweden right now?
In Stockholm, Sweden, it's 6:28 p.m.
Wow. That's 6 hours ahead. Are you near Stockholm? Did he say Stockholm?
It says Sweden.
Ankin Ma'at.
We have Redtail out in Coney Island.
Redtail?
Yes. Redtail 11.
That Redtail, is that connected to the powerful pilots from the Tuskegee Airmen? Is that what that reference is, Redtail?
Let us know.
I'd love to know.
We have Hevia Ochosi, greetings. We have Penelope Asset out in New York.
Ankin Ma'at to you.
Lisa Selby in Alabama.
Ankin Ma'at, I've heard that name before.
Yes. They're so happy to catch us live. Let's see. And yes, that is Kwame Ron.
I didn't. Are you regularly on Kemetic Ascension? I didn't know that. Ankh and Mod. It's amazing that you would come in today, so you can text me some pointers. I think I've tied it. This is decent today. Actually, it took a while. It's decent.
Yeah.
You know. So, but clearly, it's not meant to. You know, there's no chief that's supposed to be an action hero. In the way that it's tied. So, it is going to be interesting.
I see Sinette Oye is here.
Ankh and Ma'at, Sinette Oye, repping Philly in the house. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
And Sinette Tracy out in Indianapolis.
Ankh and Ma'at, Sinette Tracy.
We also have Robert James out in London, UK.
Yes, Robert James has been with us. I don't think I've heard your name recently, though. Have you not been around? It's good to hear from you, Sen Robert. Ankh and Ma'at.
Big Payback Porter out in Hobart, Indiana, I believe it is.
Big Payback Porter. What a name. Ankh and Ma'at.
Tafnut Ra Bolotus in Michigan, Texas.
Ankh and Ma'at. Ankh and Ma'at.
Yes, this is Daisy Ankh out in Buffalo.
Ankh and Ma'at. Ankh and Ma'at.
Mitchell Guest out in Boston, Massachusetts.
Another Boston person, Ankh and Ma'at.
And Alicia,
out there with Sinette Newt.
Alicia Bradley out in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Ankh and Ma'at. Ankh and Ma'at.
Yes. And I'd like to say Dwaou to Antonio Kent received your donation.
San Antonio, you're supposed to be traveling with us this summer too. Full member of the Shrine, Ankh and Ma'at to you. We are really almost on the runway, you should know, family. We are about to move. We are about to move. You should know that every August 1st, Anika and I we have the honor of taking a wonderful trip to Kemet and then a trip to Ghana. So we're going to be on the continent in just a bit, and it is exciting. I'm really looking forward to having a chance to be back on the continent, be back with friends, see what's going on in Egypt, in Kemet, see what's going on in Ghana. We have some new things going on this year. How many people are we traveling with to Kemet this year, Anika?
34 of us. Well, Kemet and Ghana.
All together?
Well, our group plus African General
Yeah.
is about 80.
About 80 people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll be with about 80 people, and then we'll also be traveling with a group of I believe, about 11 to Ghana. And that will be exciting as well.
14.
Is it 14? It's more than that, huh?
14.
That's a larger group, much larger group. I think that people are beginning to travel again, and we're really looking forward to what will clearly be an amazing journey. I know I'm excited about it. I know Anika is excited. She's probably daunted right now more than she is excited, but she will be excited as we get closer. Anika handles so much of the logistics that it can be a little crazy. She was dealing with passport photos yesterday, and as something as simple as a passport photo can take a lot of work. So that's the challenge that we have. But I should say to you, family, that we are excited to get back to the continent. We are excited to be able to perhaps even speak to you from the continent. We're going to try to do that again if possible, because we believe that the connections that diasporan Africans will make to continental Africans are going to be critical in this period. We really do believe that that is the work that the ancestors expect us to do at this point. We'll be going back through that space known as the door of no return. That door that those European enslavers said would mark the end of our contact to our homeland. And to be able to go back and to break that curse will be powerful. And so I am looking forward to being back in Ghana again. Anika and I are frustrated with Ghana, not because the trip is going to not be amazing, but because we wanted to stay longer. She was saying that the other day. She's like, well, I really just wanted to be there. And so that's the thing. When you get up in Africa, Africa gets up in you. So we'll be looking forward to speaking to you straight from there as well. So this is a really good time, family, for you to share, to like, to do all of those things that will allow us to reach a larger audience, because we understand that there are people that should be here with us, people that hear the call of their ancient African foreparents, people that recognize that the traditions of Africa is what kept African people at the forefront of human civilization, and that they are traditions that we should return to. This is of critical importance. And so I'm really hoping that you, like me, feel the connection to the continent, the connection to our ancestors, and are prepared to recognize them once more. So with that, you know that we begin any gathering with the ceremony that was put together in its current form by our shrine elder, Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samad Sepata. And this ceremony is known as the opening of the way, the opening of the way. So we want you to begin by standing in the position of adoration. Are you looking at my beard? What's wrong with my beard? I knew she was looking at my beard. Please stand in the position of adoration. And you're going to expose your palms in front of you. And as you expose your palms in front of you, put the left palm just a bit further forward, the right palm a bit further back. This is the same way that your feet are going to be. Your left foot is going to be just a bit astride. And like that, you can also have your right hand a bit lower than your left hand. Don't break your wrists like this. Some people do that. That's not how it's supposed to be. If you bend your wrist, bend them ever so slightly. You can even keep them straight. This is the pose that we see our ancestors utilize for thousands of years. Today, we call it the position of adoration. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to breathe from the abdomen, breathe from below, not from here, and then we're going to chant the word Ankh. By the way, when you chant the word Ankh, it should be in this instance nasal, because you're drawing energy from here up to here. You're not actually just going from here outward. Does that make sense? It should be a nasalized sound so that it vibrates at the top of your head. Please, let us begin.
Anetrak in Bethet.
Anetrak in Bethet.
Nuke in Bethet.
Nuke in Bethet. Anetrak Hapi.
Anetrak Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter.
Turn 90 degrees.
Anetrak Serket.
Anetrak Serket.
Nuke Serket.
Nuke Serket. Anetrak Keb Senu.
Anetrak Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter. Anetrak As.
Anetrak As.
Nuke As.
Nuke As. Anetrak Amset.
Anetrak Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter. Anetrak Neat.
Anetrak Neat.
Nuke Neat.
Nuke Neat. Anetrak Dwa Mutef.
Anetrak Dwa Mutef.
Nuke Dwa Mutef.
Nuke Dwa Mutef.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter. Anetrak Newt.
Anetrak Newt.
Nuke Newt.
Nuke Newt. Anetrak Geb.
Anetrak Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter.
Anetrak Shoe.
Anetrak Shoe.
Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Nuke Shoe.
Anetrak Tefnut.
Anetrak Tefnut. 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 Nuke Tefnut. Twal Winter. Anetrak Paut in Tedru. Nuke Paut in Tedru. Anetrak and Boo in Tedru. Nuke and Boo in Tedru. Twal Winter. Dwa Winter. Dwa, 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 dwa. The new camera likes you better than it likes me. Do you notice that it follows you more than it follows me? Did you notice that?
No, I wasn't looking at it.
Folks at home, do you notice that this new camera we're using actually shifts a little bit? It's a little unusual. It likes Anika, so now it's actually on her side more than it was on my side before. And it stays that way. Like when she comes in the frame, it's looking at her and it's not looking at me. Did you notice that? Do you notice that? I'm feeling a certain kind of way, Camera. I'm feeling a certain kind of way. Anyway, at this point in our gathering, you know that we go into what we call Hesi. Hesi is a critically important concept that I dare say many people who are Kemetophiles, as Baba Heru calls them, those people who are enamored with Kemet, are still not familiar with Hesi. There's so many of us that believe that prayer. There's so many of us that believe that affirmations. There's so many of us that believe that song is something that the Christians do. That is so incorrect. There is a large, extremely large history of those people who were Hesi masters, people who were meant to speak the words, to chant affirmations, the lector priest, the Shemite, all of those people who were meant to speak these divine words. Hesi is in many ways the way that our African ancestors spoke and galvanize divine energy in rhythm and in song. And so it is extremely important. So family, today what we'd like to do is we'd like to do an oldie but goodie. It's the Hesi that Baba Heru, no? Okay, you didn't tell me that. Okay. So today we're doing the Het Heru Hesi.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was the Qumran Hesi. It's the Het Heru Hesi. The Het Heru Hesi is one that we wrote, right? You and I wrote that Hesi, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Het Heru Hesi. It's the Hesi that connects to the Lady of Beauty. That is so important. And so what we look to do is we look to bring you this Hesi, and hopefully you will put it in your spiritual arsenal. You'll put it in your tool bag. When we share these Hesi with you, we're not expecting you're only going to do it when you see us. We're expecting that you will be able to use them so you can galvanize divine energy when you need to. And so
you can download them on all of your major platforms. Yes,
and this Hesi is part of the album that we did with that wonderful couple out in Dodowa, Ghana, the Schaefers. And so you'll be able to listen to, download, and even purchase this this CD or stream the music on virtually every major platform. And so please recognize that this Hesi comes to us from Kemetic Meditations, Temple Music Volume 1, the album that the Shrine has put out. And we're really looking forward to you engaging in it. So without further ado, the Het Heru Hesi. You're clicking away.
I'm not touching it.
Ankh and Ma'at. You should recognize that, Hesi. We've done it before. It's one of the ones we've created in the shrine. Het Heru, Nefer, Henamer. Nefer, Henamer. In this instance, what we are singing is beauty and love. Beauty and love. How do you not feel the essence, the energy of Het Heru when you go outside these days? It is magnificent outside. It's hot and beautiful, and things are growing, and you have that wonderful breeze that comes across. It is absolutely amazing. So I'm hoping that you are feeling a Nefer Henamer like we are feeling Nefer Henamer. And I'm going to say to you, we're probably going to be outside most of the day, Anika, because we are going to be at the Nana Esi Afache in Queens today. It's going to be very interesting. Sorry? Afache. Am I saying it wrong? You know, she's laughing at me because and I'm assuming this is Tree and not Fonte, right? My Fonte is very, very bad, so she's making fun of me. Isn't that mean? She's making fun of me because I can't speak the language as well as she can. Neither of us can speak the language, let's be clear. So we're going to be going there, and we truly believe that we should be supporting all of those practitioners of Kemetic spirituality. It should be more, of African spirituality, not of Kemetic spirituality, but in this instance of African spirituality, because we are part of a larger community. So we're going to be going out there and celebrating that. Perhaps tomorrow we'll make it to the International African Art Festival. It happens every year. Anika and I rarely miss it, I'm going to say. We actually had our Hebs Mai Tawi. We got married on the 7th of July, and we went the day before we were getting married, which was absolutely insane. We ran over there because we wanted to experience the festival. So one of the reasons why we didn't go yesterday is because when we go, we end up buying stuff, and I just didn't think I should. So, but it's amazing. If you have not been out to the International African Arts Festival over by Commodore Barry Park in Brooklyn, you really should. It's going to be going on until Monday, so if you can't If you haven't heard of it, you should go. I recognize that not everybody is even familiar with it, even in New York, which is interesting. If you're part of the cultural African communities, of the spiritual African communities, you're certainly well aware of it because so many people go. But there are people who are not necessarily part of those communities on the periphery that are not familiar with it. So definitely, we hope that you will enjoy it this year, just as we enjoy it every year. So with that, let's continue. At this part of our Kemetic Ascension, we usually go into what we call the word of the Seba'it. The word of the Seba'it. And in this instance, based on some of the events that have occurred over the course of the last week or so, I really felt that I needed to speak about the situation that women find themselves in now with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. And so today, we'll talk about the power of the African queen and the importance of protecting Black women. Look at these images on this screen. How many of them are you familiar with? We talked about Het Heru. Do you see Het Heru in the back there with her dusky face? That bovine human face? Usually when she's depicted in this fashion, she has cow ears and her face is a bit elongated. I just think that image is beautiful, and I'm always attracted to it. How many of these images are you familiar with? Are you familiar with the one on the extreme right? Who is that? What does it represent? What are you seeing? How about the person that is to the lower left of Het Heru, who is in the back, the largest face in the back? Who is that? Are you familiar with it? These are questions we should ask. You should know that as practitioners of African tradition, you should recognize that the celebrations, the energy of the divine feminine is critically important. We know that in the other spiritual traditions that are prevalent today, the divine feminine has almost been entirely removed. That is not how ancient Africans got down. It just isn't. And so we have a lot of work to do in order to set the world back in divine order. Do we have any answers about who those individuals may be? No? Did you think those were rhetorical answers, family? Or did you think I was asking you something? They weren't rhetorical. I wanted to know if you knew who they were. Obviously, there are those of you who would recognize the small head of the woman to the left of Het Heru. I think that some of you should know who that is.
So Shantia says she recognizes Queen T.
Queen T. That is Queen T down there.
And the other one is Offset.
And the other one is Offset. Which one? The one behind her to her left? Mm-hmm. I wanted to also know if you knew who the person on the extreme right was. I don't think anyone will know who she is, and we should. We should. Let's continue. Let's continue. So, this last week, we saw something quite disturbing occur. We saw that the Supreme Court repealed Roe v. Wade. And I want to say to you that sometimes I hesitate to, sort of wade into political discussions because I think that people have a right to obviously have lots of different views, and we have lots of different views. But sometimes I think that spirituality, particularly Christianity, to be very honest with you, has been used for political views and some political feuds in some ways that are very, very damaging. And I really have to say to you that Roe v. Wade, which was the Supreme Court decision, I believe that decision was in 1974, if I remember correctly. That decision allowed for a constitutional right for abortion. And I'm going to say to you that anytime I am seeing that this tiny entity that may become a human being is destroyed, I'm concerned. Okay? I'm concerned by that because we are those people who sanctify life. But I also recognize as a man, someone with a bald head standing here, that I should not dictate what should happen for those women who are in difficult situations. That it is not my right to do that. But unfortunately, there's some things that have happened in this world that mean that we are shifting backwards. The pendulum is swinging. And you should know that one of the prominent conservative Supreme Court justices, Clarence Uncle Ruckus Thomas, actually is saying that the next thing that they should look at is honestly, they're aiming towards birth control. I hope you know that this group is actually also trying to do away with birth control. That this group, regardless of how you feel about it, is trying to do away with, trying to bring sodomy laws back in place to affect the gay community and to actually take a look once again at gay marriage. All of those things are things that they're concerned about. Of course, as Clarence Thomas was looking at all of those recent decisions that have given more rights to a larger group of people, these rights that really in some ways were not in existence in the 50s and the 60s, the one that he did not take aim at was interracial marriage. I wonder why. Well, clearly it's because Uncle Ruckus is interracial married himself. And this is the challenge that we have with some of what's happening on the right. With a 6-3 court, with a Supreme Court that is controlled mostly by conservative Republicans, we're going to see things really become very concerning. So, for example, they made it easier to carry a weapon in New York City. They also made it easier for Christians to pray in public schools. These are all things that they did, and it's amazing that over the course of the last week, they've taken aim at so many different things that we should be concerned. Anika.
So there's a question, what makes Clarence Thomas and Uncle Ruckus? Is it because he's conservative?
No, I call Clarence Thomas and Uncle Ruckus because whenever he has a chance, he aims at those rights that are given to African Americans. In fact, one of the reasons why the right was so in love with him is because he was prepared to fight and to dismantle affirmative action. So whenever there's something that is enjoyed, something that occurs that gives Black people more control and more right, he is the one that fights against it, including he was one of the major voices against the Voting Rights Act. The act that said that all of these places where Black people were actually attacked, brutalized, murdered, so that they would not be able to vote. There was a series of laws really that came right after the Voting Rights Act was signed right before the murder, the assassination of Martin Luther King. But understand that he has problems with the Voting Rights Act, and he was part of the group of people who eviscerated it. So I call him Uncle Ruckus because he acts against his own interests. That's why I called him that. And so I have lots of issues with him, tons of issues with him. There were people when he was up for nomination to the court who believed that he was going to shift into some sort of paragon of Black rights, that he was quietly waiting to be able to do that once he had a lifetime position on the court. And of course, when that was occurring, I said, there's no way that that's what he's doing. Remember, he took the space that was held by Thurgood Marshall, a venerable legal asset to the Black community. The person that fought for the Brown versus Board of Education case that went before the court, who actually was the lead attorney on that case. And so for Clarence Thomas to actually sit in the place of Thurgood Marshall should be anathema. Really, it really should. It really should. So more on this. So let's be clear that I don't want to say I'm an advocate for abortion, because the idea that something would destroy something that could turn into a life concerns me. However, I recognize that those women who are in difficult situations should be able to make a decision for their lives. And I know that these laws, many of them that are being put into place, don't even take account of things like the life of a woman or incest or rape or all of those things. It's just illegal. And I know that they are also targeting birth control. Is that something that we should be in favor of? Let's talk a bit more about why this is so destructive and damaging. So there's a really interesting article in the Times. Okay, I'm sorry, in Forbes, and it's called "The Three Biggest Implications for Black Women from Roe v. Wade's Fall." And I want us to recognize that we should always look at things through a lens that affects us, right? That's what everyone else does. I'm not saying that the fall of Roe v. Wade is something that is absolutely horrible to Black women alone. That's not what I'm saying. I think that we should really have a more nuanced position, but let's look at how it could affect women of African descent. This article looks at three areas, and I think it's interesting. First of all, we should recognize that the African American community has always been beset by inadequate access to healthcare. And that means that this is going to impact Black women more than many others. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications in the United States. Did you know that? That Black women are I'm gonna read that again, 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications in the United States. That figure is absolutely horrific, and I think there's many of us that are not aware of it. And that comes from the CDC. You should also recognize that this rate is particularly dangerous, particularly concerning in the 13 states that have what are called trigger laws. The trigger laws are put into effect because conservative states recognized that Roe v. Wade was under attack. And so they started creating laws that would say, as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned by the Supreme Court, this law will go into effect immediately. And so there were 13 states that had these quote unquote trigger laws: Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. Those are the states that had these trigger laws. In fact, look at Missouri. According to the Department of Health and Senior Services, Black mothers experience a pregnancy-related mortality ratio of 87.6 per 100,000 live births, compared to a 21.9 mortality ratio for Tomhu women. Just think about how dangerous this is. In Mississippi, the ratio for Black women was 51.9 deaths per 100,000 live births, which is nearly 3 times the rate of the ratio for Tomhu women in Mississippi. These are concerns. The inadequate access to healthcare is something that has beset our community. And the great, painful spiritual irony is that it is Africans who brought forward a comprehensive, advanced system of care, of medical care for the reproductive lives of women before any other community in the world. It's ironic that these descendants of these magnificent Africans don't have access. That's a major concern, and it is painful. It's something that we should be concerned about. Come on now. You know, I should have thought that it was going too smoothly with this clicker. So let's think a little bit more about this. Okay, the Forbes article also talked about the economic racial disparities. So in a 1996 paper by Joshua Angrist and William Evans, they said the effect of legalization of abortion, the effect of Roe v. Wade, meant that there was at least a 22-point increase in the likelihood that Black teenage women would graduate high school, and at least a 23-point increase in the probability of attending college. Did you know that? Are you aware of it? These are things that we should be aware of. There's another major study called the Turnaway Study, which followed nearly 1,000 women over 5 years in the early 2010s to examine the lives of those who wanted an abortion and received it, and those who wanted an abortion and did not receive it. And they found that those people who were denied abortions experienced lower credit scores, higher debt, more medical, public, financial records, and even bankruptcies and evictions. Having a child at a time when you are not able to care for it alters the rest of your life very often and the life of that child. Now, let me be clear. I am not saying that the cure for this is abortion, because in actuality, the problems that we see are problems that should be solved so that every woman who is pregnant can have a child and live a life that is economically viable and socially acceptable. But that's not the world we live in. For many, many, many women, having a child as a teenager, having a child as someone who was unable to have a child, unable to easily financially afford a child or socially have a child acceptably, it actually harms their lives, and it should not. And in fact, many of the people who are saying that they're pro-life are also the people that are in favor of the death penalty. Can you explain that contradiction to me? They tend to also be the people that are against things like early education, like Head Start programs and subsidies for parents. These same people who are cheering the overturn of Roe v. Wade were the same people who are seeking to kill the enhanced child tax credit so that parents could be able to better assist and raise their children. Here's the irony that we have. That they're not pro-life, they're pro-fetus. That's a concern. That's a really major concern. Now, this is maybe something that you're not familiar with. Is there a question or comment? There is a very intricate history around contraception in ancient Kemet. Did you know that? Did you know that ancient Kemet was perhaps the first place to develop an intricate program, an intricate system that dealt with the health and welfare of pregnant women and parenting women? Did you know that? Did you know that in ancient Kemet, they were able to have a pregnancy test very early? A test that not only was able to tell whether a woman was pregnant, but also a test that was able to tell the gender of the child. And that they did this using the urine of a woman that thought she was pregnant. This is the same technology that's being used today. That technology was originally developed in Africa. That I find absolutely fascinating, that they recognized that there was a hormonal change in the urine of pregnant women that would allow them to tell whether someone was pregnant. That they also had the ancient condoms. They had what were called pessaries, these items that would be placed in certain section of the birth canal of a woman so that semen would not be able to get to the egg. That this whole process was something that was brought to the world by people of African descent. Here's an interesting article, The History of Conception by Malcolm Potts and Martha Campbell in the Gynecology and Obstetrics Journal from 2002. And it starts by telling us something else interesting. The first description of abortion, the first description of the medical ending of a pregnancy is in the Ebers Medical Papyrus. In other words, abortion was something that was known to the ancient Kemetic people, and they described which trimesters it should be done safely in. Did you know that? Did you know that? I don't think most people are aware of that. This is fascinating to me. This is absolutely fascinating to me.
There are a couple of questions.
Yes, please, go ahead.
One question is, are they given a right to have births at home in the United States? And the other question is it true that birth control was created using alligator feces?
Two things. First of all, it is legal for you to have a child at home. In most states, I don't know if it's like that in every state, but I believe it is in every state that you can have a child at home. It is possible for you to do that. Some people are able to use midwives and other individuals to have births at home. It's still legal to do that. And it is true that one of the pessaries was used with alligator dung. That is true that one of the pessaries did that. And I know that sounds unusual to you. But the reality is it was treated. They didn't just take it from the alligator and stick it in a woman's birth canal. That's not what happened. They were able to recognize that the properties of the dung were they were properties that did not harm the woman, one, and two, prevented the semen from accessing the egg. Now, it's not the only pessary. There are other pessary. People always ask that question. That is one of the pessaries that was used. And I think we have to recognize that our Kemetic ancestors were able to understand some of the chemical makeup of things in a way that we don't understand. I mean, for them to first recognize the difference in the urine of a pregnant woman, how did they do that? Where did that come from? I honestly cannot tell you what the process of these ancient scientists and doctors were, these ancient midwives were, to be able to tell the difference. But you should know that that is something that occurred. Yes. Other questions? Okay. And you're looking here, I want you to recognize what you're seeing here. Does anyone recognize what you're seeing? What is this picture? Someone describe to me what you're seeing. Does anyone know where it's from? Any answers?
Not yet, but someone's looking at our curtains and on the camera, they say it looks like giant djembes.
I guess they do. I guess they do.
Someone says, someone giving birth.
Yes.
Abu Sasha says the way you're supposed to give birth.
Definitely in the ancient world, we saw that women, in fact, in some places in the world, they still do this, that women kneel on what are called birthing bricks or a birthing stool. And this allows gravity to assist with the process of allowing the baby to come out of a woman. And so in the ancient world, this is how it was done. It makes it easier, you can imagine, than trying to sit with your pelvis elevated and allow the baby to come out. You can see that that might be a little bit more challenging. And you're actually seeing two versions of Heru that the Greeks called Hathor on both sides, assisting and giving energy to this woman. This is from the temple of Dendera, the temple of Dendera that was consecrated to Heru. And you'll even notice that there's a hole in the area where the lady's hennenet is. And that is the area where you could imagine that everyone who was reborn spiritually is supposed to exit, particularly also those individuals who were buried. I want you to recognize that this is in divine symbolism and very powerful. I really think that it is absolutely beautiful. By the way, you know we're dealing with spiritual symbolism, right? Do you notice there are two Het Herus? How could there be two of the same entity standing in the same place? Clearly, we're dealing with symbolism. Sometimes people struggle with the concept of divine symbolism. Please do not. And here's that image I wanted to ask you about before. What is this image? By the way, I think it's funny that when I took this picture, I noticed that two shrine members, one priestess was actually in the picture. Can you see them on the side? Can you make out who they are? Family, do you know who they are? If you look closely, you'll see two shrine members there. I want you to look at the statue, but I'm also thinking it's quite interesting that I did not notice that when I took the picture. And yeah, I took this picture.
Son Jason said a boot hurt.
Yes, you see a boot mahurt on the side there? There's a boot mahurt. And who's right behind a boot mahurt? Can you see someone's right behind a boot mahurt? She's even tinier. I mean, I think she's on. I see Sinette Newt there. Sinette Newt is in there too. Anyway, We took this picture last year. Who is this? What is happening here? How does this connect to the manner in which we see the divine feminine and actually the power of historical women in ancient Africa be actualized? In some ways, that is what we are discussing today. We're in a world that views femininity as dangerous, as negative, as evil. That's how the Western world has rendered this, and we will discuss that. But I want to see if you know who this is and what is happening in the image. Any answers?
Well, earlier it was mentioned that the statue is a woman wearing the crown of a moon, and that it was a Kandake.
That's a good answer. Mm-hmm. Yes, you could say that this is a crown of a moon because you see the sun and the plumes, right? And you also will notice that this is a woman and a man is in some ways giving power to her throne, giving power to her crown. This is a Kandake. What is the Kandake? The Kandake are those powerful queens who ended up ruling in ancient Kush. I want to juxtapose the confusion, the challenge, the issues that the Western world has with women, with women's reproduction, with the divine feminine, to our ancient Kemetic Cushitic narrative. That's what I want to juxtapose this with. I think there is no better way to juxtapose this than looking at the story of the Kandake. Kandake is the title that means something like queen. And you should know that there are a number of women who had the title Kandake, and they also had the title Kore. Kore is the word for king. So these queens, also this one here, had the title Kore and Kandake, which meant that she was the queen king. This is what we see happen in ancient Africa very often. And this statue is of Kandake, and she ruled from 177 BCE to 155 BCE as a powerful queen. Her statue is in the Nubian Museum in Aswan, Kemet. By the way, look very closely at her crown, at her face. I think that the eyes were likely inlaid jewels, and that's why they're gone, because someone stole them. And I always say, and the folks were teasing me, I took a picture of the back of the statue because you can also notice her prominent derriere. Clearly, this is a Black woman. Do you hear what I'm saying? We're talking about Africans. And we're talking about the fact that when we look at African women, they were seen as powerful. They were seen as, in many instances, equal to men, and sometimes even more powerful than men. That is not something that we see in the Western world. That is what Africa brought into existence.
So comment.
Yes.
How much energy are we going to give something we have no control over? Some people need babies to be had, and overturning Roe versus Wade sends a message: if you lay down with a man, you're going to have it.
I don't think that we should give. Here's the deal. There are a lot of things that we don't control, right? And if we decide that we can control something, then we can control it. I don't know how you feel about that. And also, why are you assuming that every woman who is giving birth has laid down with a man on her own free will? And then all of that puts the emphasis on the woman who has to carry this child to term. I mean, listen, I already told you there was already abortion in ancient Kemet. This is not a new thing. This is not they stuff. This is not they stuff. That's the way we approach things sometimes. I absolutely believe that birth control and a woman having the power over her own reproduction is important for a civilized society. That is what I'm talking about here. And I think that part of this comes from a place that is disturbing in the Western world. More on that in a moment. I don't know if, and the way you phrase it almost sounds like you're saying that a woman should be smarter, like she needs to, if she lays with a man, she knows she should have a baby. What about the man? Don't men lay with multiple women? Do they bear no responsibility? Is that what we're also saying? I'm concerned by the way that that question was phrased. And I really think that we need to look at it more comprehensively, is the way we should look at it. So take a look at these 8 women. There's Shanak Dakete, there's Amani Rainis, there's Amani Shaketo, there's Amani Torre, there's Amani Tarakidi, there's Amani Katashan, there's Malek Korobar, and there's Lahia Demani. These are those ladies that ruled as powerful rulers. Look at them. All the way, there is a broken area there from 85 CE to 266 CE. But notice that we're talking about 8 women who ruled as king, queen. This is important. This is very important. By the way, you should know that when the Romans got access, had interaction with these ladies, they didn't call her Kandake, they called these ladies Candaces. The name Candace is where this comes from. It's a Romanization of that word. And so we should recognize that this is a powerful thing. Anika?
There's a lot of comments.
Yes.
Was abortion used as a weapon in ancient Kemet on any segment of the population before the invasions?
As a weapon? I think we should say absolutely no. And to be clear, I don't think that abortion is being used as a weapon now. You have to agree, a woman has to agree to an abortion. How's it used as a weapon? I think that one of the reasons why we see such a large number of Black women having abortions is because of all those other things we need to address. Why hasn't this society addressed the cost of childcare? Why hasn't this society addressed the difficulty with feeding children, with educating children, rather than simply saying, you have a child, then go ahead and keep it? I think that what we should be doing is looking at all of those other things that make raising children difficult. And this society is not interested in that. The same people who are chairing this are the same people that got rid of the enhanced child tax care credit. The same people who are in favor of the death penalty. The same people who think that there should be no free education at all. So what they're basically saying is, have a child, but we don't have any role in assisting you in caring for that child. That's what the state should do. And I honestly believe that this should be a woman's choice. It should not be the choice of the state. It should not be the choice of the state. That's the situation that I'm trying to articulate to you. Other comments, questions?
Just want to acknowledge Dr. Chinzera, who's in the room.
Wow, Ankin Ma'at to Dr. Chinzera. We haven't seen you in some time. Ankin Ma'at to you. It is wonderful that you're here with us.
Representing Virgin Islands.
Representing the Virgin Islands. Wonderful. I'm so glad that you're here. Okay, so let's continue. I want to talk to you briefly about, this is a wonderful picture, I think, of someone trying to depict Amani Rainis. Amani Rainis was a very important lady. What did she do? She was a powerful queen who was in control of Kush during the time that it was that Kemet was under the control of the Romans. And it seems pretty clear that she didn't think the Romans should be there. So she would continually take her army and raid the Roman outpost in Kemet. At one point, she would sign a treaty with them saying she wasn't going to do anything. And as soon as the Roman army would go back to Rome, she would go ahead and raid them again. And so at one point, they tricked her. They acted like the army had left and they were actually in hiding. And so when she took her army forward into Kemet to raid their outposts, they attacked her. It is said that she had to fight with a small section of her guard herself. And during that battle, she lost an eye. But she still continues to fight to the point where she was able to be victorious. And at the end of that battle, she takes her sword and cleaves the head off of the statue of Caesar Augustus, I believe. I think that was who the Roman king was. And she takes it back to Nubia. For many, many years, historians thought that that was nothing but a farcical legendary story until they started doing digging in the area that they believe is the palace of Amenuenus. And they found that the head was buried under her throne. This was a powerful warrior queen, and we should know more about these great ladies. Yes?
So a comment was made that Kemet was all about fertility and abortion would be Isfet.
Well, if you believe it's Isfet, then why do we see it in the Ebers Papyrus? Then you have to say, how was that Isfet? Right? I think that fertility is critically important, but I think that what we should recognize is when people are in difficult situations, how do you handle it? How do you handle it? I am not saying that abortion is a good, that you should be able to, that everyone should have an abortion. How could I argue that? But what I am saying is it's a medical procedure that we see in ancient Kemet. How do you explain it? If that's the case, how do you explain it? And I think that we should allow women to make that decision. That's what we should do. This is not, by the way, you should also know that most women who have an abortion have other children. Did you know that? That I think the number is 85%. 85% of women who have an abortion have other children. These are all things that we need to be aware of. And so that is something that we should be clear on. I wonder how many of the people answering are saying those things are women. Yeah, because a lot of times men are the ones that think that we should have a say in what a woman should do to their body. I honestly say, as a man, stay out of it. That we should create a society that is endearing to young children so that young children can live prosperous lives. Instead, that is not what our society has done. That's not what our society has done. Our society has created a world in which many people wonder whether they should bring children into this world. That's what we should be working on. And that is not what we have done. Because I guarantee you, knowing many women who have had to make this difficult decision, I guarantee you that none of them wanted to do it. So what should we be doing in our society so that getting pregnant and bringing a child to term is something that is not onerous and deleterious to the rest of their lives? What should we do? What should we do, though? For example, a teenage mother could actually have a child and not damage the rest of her life and even the life of a child. What should we be doing? That is where this society's emphasis should be placed on, and it is not. It's not. It's not. So that's a major concern. Okay, take a look at these wonderful pieces. These come from Amanatore. They are beautiful, beautiful. You would look at these and might think that they are Kemetic. Well, they're Cushitic Kemetic. Let's describe them that way. Do you see this lapel, this pin for a moon on the bottom? Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Many of these pieces were in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, and now my understanding is that they're loaning them all over the world. Why the Boston Museum of Fine Arts isn't excited about the fact that it has all of these pieces that come from Nubia, I have no idea, but these are some wonderful, wonderful pieces. And now you're seeing an image of, I believe this is also Amanatore, standing in a position where she's holding up the sky. This is powerful as well. And it seems to be a position that was prominent in the Nubian story.
There's a question. What's
Yes.
the significance of the statistic you just gave of 85% of women who get an abortion already have children?
What I'm saying is that having an abortion doesn't mean that you don't want children. What I'm saying is that a lot of times what we're seeing is abortion occurs and it harms families. That these pregnancies that are unwanted harm families, and that this society should get to a point where having a child is not the death knell for a family. That's not where we are. That's not where we are. How many of you had to pay for childcare? I know that I have friends that have moved to other cities because they saw how much childcare was. That's how serious the cost of childcare is. We live in a society where it is difficult to raise children. And that should not be the case. That is what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. And so when we think about abortion, sometimes we think that these are people who have a problem with life. Obviously, it isn't if most of them have other children. That is what I'm saying. Okay, other questions, comments? Now, listen, I knew this is a controversial topic, but have you known me to steer away from controversial topics? No, you have not. And so I'm going to continue. Sometimes I'm going to pique your interest. Sometimes I'm going to make you mad, and that's good. Because I want you to come out of your slumber and to view the Kemetic community as an institution that should access and should take power within our communities. And so we have to think about these issues as well. And I want to hear, I bet you the women are mostly quiet. Okay. Okay. That's the challenge I have. Okay, so let's look. You're also seeing a wonderful hetep table. Look at that one. This looks like it is probably Ast and Anpu pouring libation for the soul of this person. This is very common. This now you see Inbethet pouring libation with Anpu. So these are common images in Kush that we see during that period in time.
Okay, so one person feels like his comments aren't being addressed, so let's just run them all down. He says, I bet the powerful women in Egypt plan to have the next king or queen that wasn't having kids to get, they wasn't having, I'm sorry, you're typing very fast and it's not easy to read. They weren't having kids to get benefits from government like free Section 8 housing or child support or free groceries. So this definitely does not sound like the rules of Ma'at.
They weren't having children to get those things? When you get children, that means you get free Section 8? By the way, there are some women who are able to get Section 8 when they have children, but do you know that Section 8 is almost not taken anywhere? What does that mean?
Because most women aren't planning to have families while they have sex.
Is that true? What can you support that? Most women are not planning to have families when they have sex?
Women should use the power of creating the future generation very wisely because they are destroying the family units and the kids are unbalanced without.
Women are destroying the family units? Who is this saying this?
Information frequency.
Okay. Information frequency, you and I should chat offline as well. It sounds like you're saying women are destroying. I mean, you know, the men are the ones that are laying with. The women don't have children by themselves, right? Right? They have to rear them for 9 months. So what happens during that time? Huh?
You have to carry them.
Yes, rear. I mean, yeah, they have to carry them for 9 months, right? Right. And I think that this is a challenge. I think that some of this comes from this Western society's challenge with femininity and even challenges or difficulty with the female reproductive system. Look at the book of Leviticus, by the way. Sometimes when I talk to people in the Hebrew Israelite community and others, they say they're Leviticus priests, right? Right, and they see that as a powerful thing. But then when I ask them to read sections of it, then they start scattering to the hills. Take a listen. This is in verse 19. It says, whenever a woman has her menstrual period, she will be ceremonial unclean for 7 days. Did you know that women were unclean for 7 days, as told to us by the Bible? Anyone who touches her during that time will be unclean until evening. Anyone who touches her during that time will be unclean until evening. Anything on which the woman lies or sits during this time of her period will be unclean. If any of you touch her bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water. and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch any object she has sat on, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Let's continue. If a man has sexual intercourse with her and her blood touches him, her menstrual impurity will be transmitted to him. He will remain unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies will be unclean. This is where some of this challenge with female reproduction comes from. Let's continue. If a woman has a flow of blood for many days that is unrelated to her menstrual period, or if the blood continues beyond the normal period, she is ceremonially unclean. As during her menstrual period, the woman will be unclean as long as the discharge continues. Let's continue. When a woman's bleeding stops, she must count off 7 days. Then she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and present them to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Can you imagine that this is what's supposed to happen when a woman ends her menses? Through this process, the priest will purify her before the Lord for the ceremonial impurity caused by her bleeding. This is how you will guard the people of Israel from ceremonial uncleanliness. Otherwise, they would die, for the impurity would defile my tabernacle that stands among them. This is how the reproductive system in the biblical world is viewed. Comments, questions? I bet you very few on that. Yes, I thought there'd be very few on that. I'm trying to say to you, family, that is where the challenge with the reproductive system of women comes from. It comes to us from the Bible. It comes to us from some of the origins of what are seen as Western society. By the way, I want you to take a look at this Renaissance statue. It's actually a frieze where you see Adam on the left, the snake in the middle, and the woman on the right. This is at the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore. I'm going to be trying to do a tour there soon as well. And it's by the Italian sculptor Giovanni della Robbia. It was made around 1515. I want you to take a look at it and tell me if you notice anything bizarre about it. Look at it carefully and tell me if you notice anything bizarre. So let's talk about some of the misogyny in the Bible. You should know that in the Bible, women are property. Women are property. It says in Exodus 20:17 and similarly in Deuteronomy 5:21. By the way, these are 2 books that were supposed to be written by Moses. You shall not cover your neighbor's house. You shall not cover your neighbor's wife or his male slave, his female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything which belongs to your neighbor. So let's be clear that, first of all, your neighbor is male and that women are the property of men. That is what we see. Let's continue in 1 Corinthians 11:7-10. I'm sorry?
These comments are.
What's the comment now?
I get where it comes from. It's kind of valid. Menstrual blood touching your genitalia is unclean.
Okay, I'd like to see a source. How does menstrual blood touching your genitalia unclean? Is it possible that you got that from the society that we live in? Is that possible? I'm challenging you here, dear brother, and I know this is a brother. I'm challenging you to think about this. Now, listen, we live in Western society. These concepts pervade the society we live in. The question I'm asking you is, do they make sense, or do they come from a place that views women as unclean and evil and less than a man? That's what I'm asking you. I'm going to challenge you to think about that. Let's continue. Let's continue. And if you think that the blood from a woman's vagina is unclean, how do you feel about the baby that comes out that you definitely think should always come out? How do you think about that baby being covered in a woman's blood? Is that baby ritually unclean? Is that the way you view it? That's a tough question. Let's continue. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head. I want you to listen to this very carefully. For as much as he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man. In other words, the woman is not made in the image of the divine in the biblical narrative. They are made in the image of the man. Remember that the woman came from the rib of a man? Do you remember that? For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. The women are created for man. And so they have a lower standard in the biblical narrative. Let's read another. Unto the woman he, God said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and for he shall rule over thee. This is in Genesis. The husband rules over the woman, and she actually is in sorrow based on her conception. Why? Because of this image here. Because she is the one in the biblical narrative that was deceived by Satan, the snake in the garden. Let's continue. Women should have no voice in the Bible. Men should pray. However, women, here's the quote from 1 Timothy 2, 9 to 15. Women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with braided hair. Sisters, if you have braided hair, that's against the Bible. Or gold. Sister, if you have bamboo earrings, at least 2 pair, you better understand that's against the Bible. Or pearls, or costly array. So if your queen thinks that she should dress with jewelry, with this is against the Bible. Anika, you're making faces like there's a lot to talk about. Do you want to share some of it? You're handling all the questions. Please let me know if there's more for me to speak
people
to.
are going to have their own opinions, and they have the right to.
There's nothing wrong with having your own opinions.
Letting people communicate that.
But I also want you to recognize, and this is a hot one, right? This is a hot one.
Yeah, I mean, people they want to talk, and I think they should have space to talk.
They should have space to talk. That's right.
Just allowing for the space, but just letting people recognize that there are other views.
Yes, and make sure that it's respectful as much as you can. Okay. Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. But Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. Women, did you know it's your fault that we left the garden, that we were thrown out the Garden of Eden? Did you know it's your fault? What's the punishment that you should have for being the reason why we're no longer in this perfect garden? But the woman was deceived. The woman being deceived was in the transgression. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing, if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. In other words, sisters, when you have those menstrual pains, when you struggle during conception, you know that this is a punishment because you were the one that was deceived by Satan in the garden. Did you know that according to the Bible? That is what we see in 1 Timothy. Let's continue. There are other challenges with female sexuality. Listen to this from Leviticus 21:9 and Genesis 38:24. And the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profane her father, she shall be burnt with fire. Did you know that women should be burned if they have intercourse with men other than their husbands? Burned. Let's continue. This is from Deuteronomy 22:21. Then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die, because she hath wrought folly in Israel to play the whore in her father's house. So shalt thou put evil away from among you. In other words, this is when a woman is deemed not to be a virgin when she is at her marital bed. If she's not a virgin, she should be taken to her father's house and stoned to death. This is the challenge that we have. There is no equal statement about men. You should know. Men can do what they like. Okay. Did you know that women should be married to their rapist? Listen, this is in Deuteronomy 22:28 to 29. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, in other words, she's not engaged, and lay hold of her and lie with her, and they be found. This part is really confusing me. And they be found. What happens if they're not found? Then that man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. I wonder how women feel about that. If she's raped by a man, that man has to pay her father 50 shekels, and then she will become his wife. I wonder how she should feel about that, being married to her sexual predator. That's in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, the book that is supposedly written by Moses. Let's continue. Women should refer to their husbands as Lord. In Genesis 18:12, it says, therefore Sarah laughed with herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, of being old also? Did you know that women should call their husbands Lord? And in Numbers 33-15, we even see that a woman's vow to God can be nullified by her father or husband. So if they make a vow that they are going to live a sacred, holy life, the husband can say, no. I have control over that. You did not. You did not speak to God. You have to speak to me. Very, very interesting. And of course, women are told to submit to their husbands, and husbands are told to love their wives in Colossians 3:18-19 and Ephesians 5:22-25. Just think about what that means. Just think about what that means. Women are told to submit to their husbands, but husbands are told to love their wives. To submit to their husbands. Interesting. And in the non-canonical Gospel of Thomas, we hear that women can only be saved if they become men. So that Mary, in order to go into heaven, Jesus says he may make her a man. There are lots of other issues here. I'm not going to go into more of them now, but I want you to look at this frieze that was created by Giovanni della Robbia again. Did you notice anything unusual about it? Did anyone answer that, Anika? No, they're too busy really having a deep conversation there, huh? I want you to look at the snake. Do you see the snake in the middle? Did you notice anything about the snake? The snake looks like the woman. Here's another image of it. Did you switch to this one, Anika? The snake looks like the woman. Did you notice that? By the way, I'll tell you, they're also pale as all get out. But anyway, I want you to recognize that this is the way that women are seen in the biblical world. And it should be a concern because the biblical world serves in many instances as undergirding the world we live in. Did you know that there was a period in the history of the United States when it was normal? Okay, we just got a delivery. That's what happened. It just alerted to me. Did you know that there was a period where it was normal for women to clean themselves, their vaginal area, using Listerine? Look at the ad on the other side. It says, the harm that women do to themselves. Intimate use of harsh antiseptics leads to untold damage. Now hail a gentle, safe means. By the way, I use Listerines occasionally to gargle, to sort of rinse my mouth. That stuff burns. I can only imagine what it would have been like in a woman's intimate area. Did you know that Listerine was used that way? How about Lysol? Look at the front of the Lysol bottle. It even says it has a recipe for douching. Can you imagine douching with Lysol? And the ad on the right says, a test for model wives. Beware of the one neglect that sometimes kills romance. Are you a good housekeeper? Do you take care of your looks? Are your meals appetizing? Do you avoid nagging? Are you economical? Are you always careful about feminine hygiene? Because this neglect may kill romance. This is the way that female reproduction, that the female reproductive system, and that women were viewed in the West. And I am arguing to you, family, that these ideas are still undergirding the manner in which women are viewed. That's the challenge that we have. Look at the difference in the Kemetic narrative. I want you to see here the image of Ast, suckling Heru, and the Tiet. You see this red item that is made of jasper? This is a representation of the knot of menstruation that is connected to Ast. It's the symbol of Ast. And if you look at the Reyu Pert and Ruangere, chapter 156, it describes this knot. It says, formula for Tiet, knot of jasper. The blood is yours, Ast. Your powers of light are yours, Ast. Imagine that her menstruation is seen as a power of light in the Kemetic tradition. Is this meaning that if blood touches you, you are unclean, dear brother? This is from the Kemetic text. Is it possible that the ideas that you have might have been influenced by Western concepts? Is that possible? Let's continue. Your powers of word are yours, Ast. Amulets are the protection of this great one, guarding against the one who would inflict his injury. Words spoken over Tiet, knot of jasper, sprinkled with the water of the Ankh Imi plant, strung on a fiber sycamore and placed at the neck of the blessed dead on the day of burial. As for anyone whose neck these amulets are placed, the powers of Ast will be the protection of his body, so that Heru, son of Ast, will rejoice over him when he sees him in secrecy. No way is against him. His arm is toward heaven. His arm is toward earth, a correct matter 1,000,000 times. Just think that this symbol of the menstrual cycle of Ast is a symbol of divine protection for those who are going into the afterlife. Radically different than the way that the reproduction system is described, is issued in the biblical narrative. If you think that the biblical narrative sounds like something you agree with, maybe it's because you have been influenced by the biblical narrative. That is not how we did for thousands of years. We did not see the menstruation of a woman as something that was ceremonially unclean. And finally, I want to read to you from the Maxim of Ptahhotep, as he describes the important place that women play in our societies. He says in his first maxim, the first maxim of the world's oldest complete book, written by a man. Listen to what he says to the child that he's not a child, a young man who he views as his spiritual son. He says, be not arrogant with your wisdom. The greatest knowledge can be found amongst the women toiling at the millstone. He's talking about those working class women who would grind grain to make bread. So I want you to understand that in the Kemetic narrative, we do not see that women are less than us. We do not see the reproductive system of women as something that is cursed, that is something that that the divine has given them, the pains the divine has given them for some sort of punishment. We do not view it that way. That's the biblical narrative, family. And I truly believe, as we stand at a time when women have less control of their bodies, that position has been influenced by the ideas of the Western world. Let me say to you, family, I hope that every woman who is pregnant has the choice to have a healthy, happy, wholesome childhood with their child. But that's not the world we live in. And I'd say, family, particularly men, this is something we ought to stay out of. Women should have the right to control their own bodies, just as they did in Kemet. Just as they did in Kemet. So I know this is a controversial topic. I'm glad that it's a controversial topic. I'm not going to shy away from topics that push you to think further, because thinking further perhaps will get you beyond the things that we know and believe simply because we are in a society that we were kidnapped and forced to live in. We should decide for ourselves what our societies should look like. And they should not be simply under the auspices of our enslavers and their descendants. That's the challenge I have. Any comments or questions, Anika?
There's lots of comments. But I think it's great that the chat room is communicating with each other, and both sides are being represented. So
good. And family, let me say to you that this is a discussion we should have. This is a discussion we should have. And I'm going to say to you, we should be able to make decisions for ourselves and for our communities. That's not something that's happening right now. So I say the divine force in me greets the divine force in you. Please go forth and have an amazing rest of your day while we think about these issues and think about how our communities should return to their powerful whole status. Shemin Ma'at. Anika, can you please come forward for the final affirmation?
Sure. So I was unusually quiet today. I have my own opinions, but I figured it was best to have the chat room have their discussion. It's not about me. This is really about us as a family having a conversation that's very integral to who we are and what we think about our own communities. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to have these conversations, not just looking at what has happened on TV and what other people think through the lens of their own traditions, but what we are thinking through the lens of our traditions. So I wanted to give space to the chat room and allow people to have the conversations that they felt that they needed to have. And I appreciate people who are being respectful with their comments. I didn't have to block anyone today. Right. I think, people are just very strong in their opinions, and that's fine. And I wanted to give you space to do that. So I hope people appreciated the fact that they were able to have this conversation.
Yes. Yes. Wonderful.
So I would like to offer you our final affirmation for the afternoon, and it's the oldest prayer known as the Amasu. So if you could stand in the pose of adoration and repeat after me, first in the language of our ancestors, and then in English. Amasu en Pater.
Amasu en Pater.
Sauksu.
Sauksu.
Ementra.
Ementra.
En Pater.
En Pater.
Autu.
Autu.
Aura.
Aura.
Maketipa.
Maketipa.
Herura.
Herura.
Give yourself to the One Most High.
Give yourself to the One Most High.
Keep yourself daily for the divine.
And keep yourself daily for the divine.
Do it tomorrow.
Do it tomorrow.
Just as you did today. Swallow and turn.
Swallow and turn.
Thank you to the divine.
Thank you to the divine.
And thank you to all of you.
Have an incredible day. Continue this challenging conversation. We ought to make these decisions on our own. And I truly believe that women should have the right to decide what happens to their body on their own as well. We'll see you soon. Shemin Ma'at, go forth in divine balance.